All right, 21 Things crew. Little change of plans. Now, I know that we were supposed to have, well, first of all, today's Tuesday, May 20th, and today at 4 o'clock, we were supposed to have a webinar. My wife reminded me this morning when I told her that I was going to be late that our son is kind of having his first Little League game. So, in order not to have to sleep on the couch for a long, long time, we're not going to do this. Instead, I'm making this this video right now for you. All you need to do is just watch this whenever it works for your schedule. And as we go along, I'm going to have, I think there's like 4 big questions. What I'd like you to do is as we go along, just pause the video when you come to each big question, answer that in the Google Doc that I'm going to provide, or the Google form, and then be sure to submit those at the very end, and that'll be just as good as being in the webinar. So anyways, let me just kind of go through a few business items right to begin with. First thing, if you go and look in the class schedule, if you look in the class schedule, you will see that thing number 6. Well, let's see. Let's go back a little bit. Here we go. Thing number 7 is open as of now. That's on collaboration tools. That's the last thing that you're going to be doing. And those are all those assignments and projects and things like that are going to be due on right now. Keep your fingers crossed. Monday, May 26th. Now, I know that is Memorial Day, so we might look at kind of switching that around a little bit. We'll have to see. There's some Michigan Department of Education is kind of tricky when it comes to switching around the agenda and things like that. But right now, that is the day. Monday, May 26th is when all the projects need to be done as well as your portfolio. Now remember, when we were talking about portfolios, really what we're going to do is just have you write something out on what was the most valuable tool that you learned about with your or for your classroom, and we'll get more information on that soon. So here is big question number 1. Okay, so you're going to put this in the Google Doc or in the Google form there. A handful of you are chugging right along, doing very well. You're right on pace to get everything finished up. The majority of you have a long ways to go. So here's my question. For those of you who are back a little ways, but you're still plugging along, you're still working on it, how can Melinda and I help you? Because we want you to get this done. We think there's a lot of valuable stuff here for your classroom, and we really want to make sure that you're able to complete this, whether it's just for your own gain or for the sketches or whatever that happens to be. So for big question number 1, how can we make sure that you finish this? All right, so now that you've answered big question number 1, let's move on. So we are going to be, a few of you are back in thing number 4, the research and reference tools. And it was really interesting to read a lot of the responses that you gave, because remember, this is about the MEL educational database and then some of the free citation tools and things like that. I love that you guys are brutal is a good word, brutally honest. For the MEL library and things like that, went through there and got a lot of good feedback on this. I love that, like I said, that you guys are honest, that you're not necessarily drinking the Kool-Aid. Because a lot of the responses back, I was seeing things like overwhelming, cumbersome. They wanted my driver's license. It wouldn't work well for younger students. Didn't apply to my subject area. This was maybe more for college-age students. Didn't produce anything better than what you would find in a Google search. And that's okay. We want you to be honest on that, and apologize that it wasn't as helpful as we had hoped. But this brought up some really good thoughts. You know, with so much content being online and you hear the data about or the numbers behind, okay, well, on Wikipedia or Google, or the number of searches, or how much video is uploaded on YouTube per minute, and all of those things, our students are getting flooded with all of this content. And my oldest daughter, Isabel, she's in fourth grade, and it's interesting to watch what she does when she comes home and works on some things. Whenever she has to do like a Google search or things like that, I'm seeing two problems with Isabel, and also what I saw with my own high school students when I was teaching chemistry and physics, is that, first of all, a lot of students have this idea that if it's on the internet, it's reliable and it's right. I don't know how many times I've had to talk to Isabel about just the validity of things that she heard, or if somebody said, well, it was on the internet. For some reason, a lot of kids seem to think that is the stamp of approval, that it is right. The other thing that I've noticed with Isabel, whenever she's doing those Google searches, is she will just take whatever, she'll do the search. A lot of times she'll type the question into the Google search, and then take the very first the very first hit, or the very first result, and go off of that. So we know that when it comes to researching information and things like that, one of our most important jobs is to help our kids filter that information so that they know that what they're looking at is reliable. And I could get up on my soapbox about that, but I'll spare you there. But here's big question number 2. You've seen that there's all of this information out there. You've seen the databases. You've seen all of that fun stuff. Think about our kids, okay, our students. If we're having problems as adults finding information on a Google search or in one of these databases, or how on earth are our kids going to be able to wade through all of that and find the right information? So big question number 2 is, give me one tip or trick or piece of advice that you use with your students to make sure that they are being effective searchers on the internet. Okay? How is it that, or what are you teaching them in order to help them understand that they're using the best possible information? So that's big question number 2. Feel free to pause, put your information in on the Google form, and then start things up again. All right, so for thing number 5, that is the online interactive learning tools. And this was a lot of fun. The 2 big tools that we talked about were Google Earth, and then some of the online quizzing features with Quizlet and StudyStack and things like that. It was a lot of fun where all the where I'm at and the where I want to be. We are all definitely thinking about summer vacation, but I'll tell you, I'm seeing people are going to Germany. People were in Thailand. People are going to the Grand Canyon. You guys have some great summer plans. That is really cool. And it's just interesting to see how Google Earth is really doing that. And it's always interesting when we Google our own houses. And you can tell on mine that it was taken sometime in the summer a few years ago. And my neighbors to the west of me, they fertilize their lawn. Neighbors to the right of me, they do that as well. I didn't get to it that year, and you can definitely tell from the view there. Anyways, here's what I want to do. You've seen Google Earth, you've seen the Quizlet and the StudyStack. Let's talk about application a little bit. Along the same lines of Google Earth, there's something that is called Google Lit Trips. And these are, so if you go to googlelittrips.com, you'll see this. Now, you think literacy, and the way a lot of people or the way this originally started was ELA teachers were taking books that they were reading and then using Google Earth and kind of making an interactive map of all of the things that were happening within the story. So like, for example, the kite runner and how that was happening over in the Middle East and all of the different things that were happening there. If you go to googlelittrips.com, you can see a lot of interesting things. And what I like about it is that it's very, it's kind of divided up into different age groups and things like that. In fact, it's funny because the very first contributor that it talks about right here, this is Andy Losick, and he's right here from Michigan. He's over on the western side of the state, up in the Hamilton schools area. But let me show you this, because the whole Google Earth thing, it's more than just books and interactivity and things like that. There's also a lot of things that you can do with this. So if you go to this tour builder, this is similar to a Google Lit Trip, but it's on Jane Goodall and what she did with her, or with all the research that she did. And if you look at this, as you kind of go down the side here, it takes you to different points and it tells you a story as you go along. So this is the first one, and it'll zoom in, and this is where she grew up and all of that stuff. And then if you go on, and it gives more information down here. But as you click on these different spots, what it does is it zooms in and out and really gives this fantastic full picture of what she was going through and where she was going and all of those things. So think really fast about how you could use this in whatever subject area you teach. Okay, how could you use Google Earth and this idea of lit trips or tour builders to have your students kind of demonstrate what they understand, or have that whole that full picture of what's going on? And I think it's important to understand that while this happens to be, or using the entire Earth, you could do this with just your neighborhood or just your county or just your city or things like that. One interesting thing that I saw with this, it was a social studies teacher. And what he had done was he had students go and take pictures during, it was during a campaign season, and take pictures of all of the different campaign signs that were spread out around, and then they put them on Google Maps. And it was interesting to see this concentration of, okay, these are the people that have these kind of signs in their yards over here, and these people have these kind of signs over there. And it was really neat to kind of see that wide variety there. So just an idea there of the idea of using maps to help your students kind of get a full picture of things. Another one, and this is more for math science, but it's the pHET interactive simulations. And one of the things, this is out of the University of Colorado. This is something that I used a lot on my in my chemistry and physics classes, because these are, once again, these are simulations. It's very interactive. What I love about this is that they are now doing what's called HTML5. For those of you who have iPads, you know that some websites that are Flash-based don't work. pHET used to be all Flash-based, and it made me sad because I couldn't get to a lot of things on the iPad. Well, HTML5 changes that, so these can all be done on iPads now, which I think is really, really neat. So if you look here, these are all of the different simulations. They're all free, which I think is absolutely amazing. Once again, these are mostly math, science, but you can sort by grade level. So if I wanted to go over here to elementary, and I wanted to talk about, let's say, forces in motion, I just think this is really, really cool. So you can download this, or you can run it in HTML5. That's what I'm going to do. But what I love about this more than anything is that it is interactive. It's not passive. They're not just watching a video. They are going in there and kind of moving things around. And that's going to lead to our next big question that talks about the smarter balanced assessment. We'll get to that in a second. But this particular one, this tug of war, what you can do here is you can take these different figures and kind of stack them up on the side and see what happens. So I'm going to go and I'm going to take this guy, put him right over here. And I'm going to take one of these munchkins over here, put them like that. And then I hit go and watch what happens. And there's all sorts of things that I can build into that. So math science teachers, you've heard about guided inquiry and stuff like that. There is so much that you can do where you are kind of getting students to look at this, analyze what happens. In this case, I can put numbers on it. I can put value or sum of forces. There's all sorts of things. Like I can go over here and I can put another person here, and we all see what happens there. Like I said, what I love about this is it's very easy for students to go in, do these simulations, and then it'll provide some talking points or some experience that you can use to go over things more in depth. But here's big question number 3. So I don't want to get political. I don't want this to turn into a pissing and moaning session because we know it's just that time of the year and things like that. But here's my question, and I want to be proactive. I want to be positive. I want to focus on the things that we can control. So we know that there's the possibility that the smarter balanced tests are going to become a reality. Now I know it's still up in the air, but let's play pretend. Here's what we know about the smarter balanced tests is that they're online. There's a lot of manipulation of either objects or data or other things like that, and our students have to be ready to take those kind of tests because they are so different. So here's what I'd like you to share with me in your big question number 3. What is one idea or one thing that you think you could do to help prepare your students for these tests? Now, I don't want to get into they need to be on the computer more. Be specific. What's something that from what you've heard about Smarter Balanced, what's something proactive that you could do in order to get your students ready for these type of interactive tests? So go ahead, think about that, hit pause, come back. All right, so the next thing is digital images, and it was really fun to get to see some of the things that you guys put in there. Now, I'm just going to apologize ahead of time. Some of you who were going along on this, I had screwed things up. I didn't open some things at the right pace, and even when I did think I had them open, they weren't showing up, so I apologize for the grief that caused you. Everything is open now, and this is one of my favorite things because there's a lot of tools in here, but the implications of how that can be used in the classroom are pretty awesome. So you guys know that with the digital photos, there was some editing tools and things like that. It was fun to look at a lot of things that you guys had put in there. There's also the whole Photo Peach slideshow and doing that, and saw some really great examples like with yearbooks and things like that of using slideshows to show that. But here's where I get really excited about the application of this. We know that a lot of students, there's more and more devices, there's more, tablets are becoming cheaper and cheaper, especially at the high school level. Every single student has a cell phone that they could use to not just in school take pictures, but go outside of class and take pictures and things like that. Think about how you could use media like pictures to get your students to demonstrate understanding. We know with the Common Core that's the big thing, is this idea of demonstrating understanding, showing what you've learned, showing the process, all of those things. So let me show you just one of my favorite resources when it comes to getting ideas. Wes Fryer is out in Oklahoma, and he has a website called playingwithmedia.com. And his thing is using multimedia to get students excited about showing what they've learned. I would definitely recommend checking this out because, once again, it gives so many examples of how to use media in your classroom, regardless of the age and regardless of the subject area. But right over here, this link right here, mapping media to the Common Core, this is really, really powerful. And this is where I need you to think about whatever it is, whatever subject area you teach or grade level, how could you tweak this idea to work for your kids? What he's done is he's given these 12 different examples of creating or having students create media to show what it is they've learned. So let me give you just one example that applies to this whole thing on digital photography. And it's what's called the 5-photo story. And what he does, and he does this with all of these different examples, is he gives you a definition, he gives you what's called a workflow, kind of how to go through and do that. He gives how to set up lessons and tools, and he just gives you everything. He even gives you examples, gives you everything that you would need in order to try this out. So let me just go back a little bit and explain what a 5-photo story is. A 5-photo story is having students explain either a story or a process in 5 photos. Go figure. But think about this. When we think about depth of knowledge and Bloom's taxonomy and other things, when students have to create, when students have to kind of analyze and put things together, this is going much deeper than just kind of being passive absorbers of. Is absorber a word? Anyways, I'm getting off track. It's active rather than passive. And with this 5-photo story, what they have to do is these students have to take the pictures and organize them in a way that tells a story that would be understandable by somebody else. So, for example, I was in a preschool class. Yeah, I was at the beginning of the school year, preschool. And what they were doing was, normally they would come in, and one of the first activities that they would do is that they would bring 5 pictures or 5 things from home, and that would tell a little bit about themselves and introduce themselves to everybody else. Well, what this teacher did is she still had them come in, she still had them bring in those things, but she had iPads and a free app called Pic Collage. And what she did was she had them go and take pictures of those 5 things. And then she had them they printed those off and they put them up around the room, and all of those kids got to make their own little collage that described themselves. Now, they still went through everything and kind of told their classmates why these things were important, but it was really neat to see these kids get excited about taking pictures of these 5 things and then showing them to other people. I've seen teachers who have done this with colors or shapes, or I've seen Spanish teachers who have done this with vocabulary words and other things like that, the whole idea of 5-photo stories. Excuse me. So think about how you could use pictures, and whether it's a 5-photo story or something else. But how could you use pictures to have your students show understanding? And you know what? That's big question number 4. thinking about what you've seen here, give an example of an activity that you could do in your classroom where students would use either pictures or some other kind of multimedia to demonstrate what they understand or demonstrate what they've learned. All right, let's wrap things up here. Thing number 7 is on collaboration tools, and it is now open. Okay, this is the last thing that you're going to do, and it focuses mostly on Google Docs. Okay, and the whole idea of cloud computing and cloud storage and collaborative documents and things like that. I'm going to let you guys go through the lesson here. But let me just show you really fast. This is my Google Drive, okay? And this is where I store all of my Google Docs and Google presentations and Google Forms and things like that. You can see that I've set it up in folders and things like that. And I've been using this for a long time, so it's really messy. But what I love about this is that, once again, I can share, I have control over who I share these documents with. And we don't have to email back and forth copies of a Word document or something like that. There's so many different ways that I can use that, and I'm going to let you guys go through that in the lesson in thing number 7. So that is it. I once again make sure that you go through and answer all of those big questions, and be sure to hit the submit button at the very end, so that way I know that you got it and we're all set. Anyways, let us know how we can help out, and you're almost to the end. You're going to be just fine. Talk to you later.